Hi, my name is Nick, and welcome to Nick's Picks Watch Reviews, the YouTube channel where we look at watches that I would pick, I might pick, or I have picked. And before we get started this week, I have a special announcement to make, and that special announcement is that it's easier to get to the channel. You can now go to youtube.com/Nick's Picks Watch Reviews to get directly here. But let's go ahead and get to the pick. This week we have the Vacheron Constantin Patrimony. Now, the Vacheron Constantin Patrimony is, in my opinion, my most beautiful watch in my entire collection, although it is very much a dress watch. It is designed to be worn under the cuff. And as a result of it being a delicate, precious metals dress watch, I'm not necessarily going to treat it the same way I would in other reviews. This is not designed to be worn daily and taken out to, construction work and pouring concrete and painting a house. You technically could do that, but just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And so I'm going to treat it as a dress watch and review it as such, and maybe not complain about the fact that you can't bring it 500 meters underwater, or 200 meters underwater, or even 100 meters underwater. You really shouldn't. So those are the kinds of things I'm not going to include, but I will focus on its aesthetic overload, its absolute dedication to beauty. And before I get into that, though, let's start with the specifications on this one. All right, so as we look at this deliberately minimalist watch inspired by the 1950s Vacheron Constantin models, the one thing that doesn't carry over is the diameter. The diameter on this model is 40 millimeters. Now, that's a more modern size, a much larger watch compared to the, vintage times when dress watches for men would be in the lower 30 millimeters. Now, staying true to tradition, it has a thickness of only 8.55 millimeters, which we have seen exhaustively now. It's a very thin watch. It has a lug-to-lug of 47.2 millimeters and a lug width of 20 millimeters that tapers down to 18 millimeters at the buckle. It features a pink gold case, handset, indices, and buckle. It is also offered in yellow gold, but in this case it is pink gold, and it is powered by a Vacheron Constantin in-house movement, the 2450 Q6/3, which is a self-winding movement with a power reserve of 40 hours and a frequency of 28,800 vibrations per hour, or 4 Hertz. It features a sapphire crystal and a sapphire display case back, which you will need because the movement on this watch is so beautiful. It's so exquisitely done. You need to have a sapphire case back because if you didn't, you would inevitably begin trying to disassemble the watch just so you can look at it. Ultimately, though, this is a watch where it is very delicate. You wouldn't want to do that, nor would you want to do much of anything other than wear it on your wrist out for an evening or on a date. It does feature water resistance, kind of. It has 3-bar water resistance, or 30 millimeters equivalent, but I wouldn't really attempt to use this in or near water. Now, the leather in the strap is very supple. It has basically formed perfectly to the curvature of my wrist at this point without any cracking, no breaking, no general stiffness. It's still, very flexible. So not really concerned about this one long term. Now, obviously, really long term, I'd want to replace it and keep it fresh. But, here it's still holding up really well. Now, one of my personal pain points here is the crown. The crown is actually really tiny compared to my fingers. So I have either giant fingers or it really is just a really tiny crown. So trying to, turn it kind of hurts a little bit. Trying to pull it is, well, that's a journey of its own. So there you go. Pulled there out into the first stop or first position. And then from there, you can try to get a grip on it again to change the date or try to pull it out further to set the time. And that part's a little bit easier once it's out a little bit further from the body. But when it's like right up close to it, really tight, it really is hard to get a grip on it. Now, usually I spend a lot of time talking about the dial on a watch, but in this case, I'm going to spend a lot more time talking about the movement because that's where the real story with this watch is. As you flip it over and take a look through the display case back, you're going to not only see some things, but you're going to feel some things that maybe you've never felt before in your life and you didn't realize you could feel. But it's really incredible. Let's go ahead and just take a look right at that for a long time. As we turn our attention to the movement, it is clear why and how this watch not only earned the Geneva seal, but has captured my heart. With its exquisite beauty. Now, if you haven't already watched my video on the Vacheron Constantin overseas, do take a look at that because I do spend a little bit of time talking about the Geneva seal and what that all means, as well as looking at a few indicators of a watch that has been well finished versus a watch that hasn't been at all potentially. Now, as we look at this one, the Patrimony, it features bridges and plates with beautiful anglage. And what I'm referring to here is the beveling or chamfering at the same angle, usually in this case, as we look at it, 45 degrees-ish, and width, so same angle and width, at the edges of the bridges and plates. And in this case, also, they're highly polished edges. So it's beveled at exactly the same angle and width all around and has that beautiful high polished finish. Now, speaking of polish, if we look at the screw heads, they exhibit black polish or mirror polish. So why black if they're a silverish color? Well, in this case, that refers to at certain angles because of just how exactly the light reflects back. At certain angles, the light reflects so evenly that it's possible for the screw heads to go completely black. There's virtually no light reflected back at those angles. Now, as we've been looking at it, you've probably noticed the Geneva stripes or the Côte de Genève throughout. In this case, that's the regular parallel wave-like patterns that basically cover most of the bridges here. And those not only cover up tool marks, but they can actually also help trap dust as well in the little ridges that they create. Now, in the case of the Patrimony, the Côte de Genève are used on those bridges that you can see that are closest to you as you're looking at the back of the watch. But as you go deeper down through the movement, so as you kind of go through and you get down to the main plate, you'll start to find that it switches from the Côte de Genève to perlage. And it creates this really cool contrast, right? So the perlage, we're talking about the circular graining or stippling there, where you have this pattern of small circles that are overlapping one another until it just covers the entire part. So you have kind of this circular graining or perlage down at kind of the main plate where you're looking at the lowest layer. But then as you work up and look at the higher layers, the bridges that are sitting up on top, you get this Côte de Genève. So you get this striping that is straight, and you get the perlage that's round. And I don't know, just a really cool effect as you look at it to get that contrast. Overall, every part of this watch, every part of this movement is aesthetic overload. From the sinks to the jewels to the balance and even the main plate, every part exhibits maximum beauty. They extracted the most beauty they could out of it. Besides the beauty of the movement, one of the things I do appreciate about this watch is the thinness of this watch. It is so thin. It slips right under every single cuff you have, even if you've gained so much weight that your cuffs are skin tight. It'll get right in there, wedge in, and it'll act like it belongs. So that about wraps it up for the Vacheron Constantin Patrimony, my favorite dress watch, and that's an easy contest to win considering I only really have a few dress watches, but this is one where it really fills the niche for me. It's one where if I do wear a suit and tie, I have something that goes well with it. I really think that if you find yourself in life wearing a suit and tie, a dress watch is a decent investment. This one is a sizable investment if you want to get that, more modern 40 millimeter size in, one of the current issued versions of this. However, if you're willing to go back in time, as it were, and look at the vintage market, you'll find that actually the Patrimony, or I should say Vacheron Constantin dress watches in general, tend to have reasonable prices on the vintage market, especially considering their gold, and the melt value of gold is such that the price isn't too far off that in some cases. Now, prices have been going up. I will say that not only on the secondary market for the vintage pieces, but also the retail price has been going up. And I'm not sure if in the case of this watch with the current retail price, if I would have been a buyer for this one. But I did buy it some time ago, so I was able to, achieve a much better price point than what's available today. Anyway, that wraps it up for this week. We will see you next time, which will be in a few weeks. I will have basically a vacation next week, and that's going to be followed by another kind of working vacation where I'll be over at the watch show down in Las Vegas at Orologio. I'll be checking out some of the watches that are there at the trunk show and getting some footage if I can and try to feature some of the picks that I have from there on this channel. So we'll see how that goes. And until then, take care. If you like this episode, please be sure to subscribe to both this channel and the About Time channel, give this video a like, and hit that notification bell to be notified about future episodes. Geez, this is going to be distracting. How embarrassing. Can see it so, like, every single detail is so clearly defined. Let's mask that out. Tweak the mask a little bit, squish it down, wrap it around, make it a little funky, and then blur. That's better. Much better. No, I don't know what to say here. This is ridiculous. All right.